Welcome to Your First Vote with Jack Okill, a podcast that breaks down Aussie politics in a way that actually makes sense. Whether you're voting soon or you just want to understand what's going on, we're talking to the people who shape the system and asking the questions that matter. No fluff, no nonsense, just real conversations for us, young Australians. For youth, by youth. Now, let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome to Your First Vote. I'm joined by Di Lee, the MP for Fowler, today. So Di, who are you? What do you do?
As you mentioned, Jack, so I'm the federal member for this electorate of Fowler, and my name is Di Lee, and I'm the first ever independent member of this electorate in Fowler, and also the first ever Vietnamese refugee to be elected to our federal parliament.
Yeah, wow. So you've had such a unique experience. You've had such a unique journey from a refugee to a councillor and now to a federal member. So how did these life experiences shape your political journey?
Yeah, look, it's I think being a somebody who's had that lived experience of being a refugee, that means that I have, escaped war-torn Vietnam long before you were born, have lived in refugee camps, have had nothing basically. If you watch television nowadays and you see people in refugee camps, it's almost that kind of a life. You sleep on the ground, you get fed by whatever food is available, you live under curfew, you can't leave the camp, etc. And then coming here to Australia, resettling, learning English, because English wasn't my first language, that obviously through that journey you learn to adapt to a different society, to, you've exposed to a different culture, society, and just very different to where I was born, which was Vietnam. And that, I suppose, it keeps you grounded. Because if you know where you come from, you know where you started, you don't take anything for granted. So anything that comes to you, you see them as opportunities. And for me, I had to work very hard to learn English, work very hard to do well at school, and then work very hard to build a life and get a job, really, to start off with, before I end up where I am and where I am now.
Yeah, thank you. So Di, what was your turning point that made you decide to run as an independent, not as a major party?
So I got into politics in 2008, and I ran back then in 2008 for state parliament, and I ran as a Liberal, and that I had the support of the then opposition leader, who was Barry O'Farrell. And of course, when I ran here in the state seat of Cabramatta, it was the second safest Labor seat in the country. And I had no experience in politics. I did not know what that meant. I had zero contacts, zero connections, zero network. And then I ran again in 2011 at the general state election, and I caused a major swing, bringing this seat of Cabramatta from 30% down to 1.5%. Made it very marginal. Soon after 2011, I got elected into council, but back then the Liberals did not endorse councillors, so I ran as an independent to get elected, and I got elected as an independent councillor. The ensuing years, I then got kicked out of the Liberal Party, and I remained an independent since 2016. And I suppose being an independent, because I got elected as an independent councillor, when the Liberal Party kicked me out from the party in 2016, it didn't make much of a difference, and I remained an independent. And then, of course, 2022, when the federal election came, I contested the seat as an independent.
Thank you for that, Di. So How does being an independent give you more freedom or more challenges instead of being in a major party?
Look, there are pros and cons in everything that we do in life. But so far, I think the pros for being an independent has far outweigh the cons, in the sense that as an independent, you speak your mind, you don't toe the party lines, and you don't wake up and go through a speaking points that most major parties, or all major parties, provide to their members of parliament. You cannot speak outside of those speaking points that major parties get on a daily basis and given to their members of parliament. And you can actually represent the community. What I do is I engage with my community here. I get a sense of what are the important issues for them, and then I speak about that. Secondly, when you go into the parliament during question time, the great thing about being an independent is that you ask the questions based on what you know your community needs. You're not given a question to ask by the parties or the executives of the parties, but you do it because you know the community needs. Thirdly, when policies and bills come to the federal parliament, you can speak on it and you can be critical of the government of the day or the opposition of the day, and you speak for your community. Unlike if you're part of a party, you can only speak, if you're part of the government, you speak pro. If you're part of the opposition, you speak against the bill of the day. So there's pros and cons of being an independent. The downside of being an independent is that you have to raise your own funds, because obviously you don't have the party machineries to do the fundraising and pay for the campaign, so you do your own. And in my case, we use our own money. We take it out of our mortgage to campaign. Secondly, you don't have the machineries, which are the volunteers that parties do provide. And so you really bring your family members and bring your friends, and you're just finding the volunteers is much harder. And so, you know, and part of as an independent, you don't have a colleague that you can go up to and kind of say, oh, look, can you help me with this and that? You're literally very independent. So you have to work with other independents to try and see where you can collaborate. Whereas as part of a party, if you don't want to work in an like if you don't have to do all the community engagement that I do a lot of community engagement. I go out there, do a lot of external engagement. Whereas as part of a party, because you're elected as part of a party, you rely very much on the party's brand and margin to get you elected, rather than your own personal brand.
So, Di, do you think more young Australians should consider supporting independence? Why not?
Look, I think our party system is broken. I think that both the major parties have really moved away from what the parties were originally formed to do, to represent the workers, to represent small business, to represent Middle Australia. And today, I feel that both the major parties have just basically aligned with certain interest groups rather than Middle Australia. So I think, and because a lot of members of parliament rise through the ranks of the parties, so they're not, say, coming from a small business person or a butcher or somebody who is, working with young people through mental health, haven't got that lived experience, and therefore they go through the party machinery and they are part of the it's called hack as opposed to party hacks, and then they just go in there and they make policies within the Canberra bubble. So I think as an independent, you have more of a lived experience. You're very connected to your community, or most independents are anyway, and because you're part of a community, you understand the priorities and the needs, and therefore when you get elected and when you're in parliament, you can fight on those issues. So I would say that for young people who feel very disconnected from our parliamentary processes and parliamentary system and parliamentary representatives, because a lot of the times they just just read out script, on cue. There's nothing authentic in what they say and what they do. So I think young people are much more informed in this day and age. They're very, connected to the internet and social media. So therefore, they want to find out people that they can relate to. And I think they probably relate more to independence, perhaps. I don't know. That's up to the young people. But I think I can just all ask young people is to look at the person that they would like to follow, and what that person does, rather than the party, because I think the party is just one big beast that don't really represent Middle Australia.
So this is a big one. A lot of young people just feel like politics is headlines, or just arguing. So what's something behind the scenes at Parliament that would surprise us or just give us a bit of hope?
And I think you're right. Young people would see politics as just headline grabbing. Even I see it as headline grabbing. Whenever the government put out a policy around, say, for instance, help to buy scheme or help to buy. What does that really mean? Help to buy a house. Can you really help people buy a house? Because when you drill through the policies, it means that the government will own part of your house. So there isn't that kind of real peeling back of what that headline grabbing policy is about. And so I can understand why young people think that. And yes, when you see during question time, all you see are people screaming at one another, there isn't a real conversation and dialogue around, around real policies. But I think what's happening behind Parliament in Canberra that could hopefully give young people hope is, from my perspective, of course I'm biased here, is the fact that independents do talk and are contributing to shaping policies. And that is something that people don't see. So whenever the government put forward a bill, the independents will look at the bill, not all of the bills, because we don't have the resources to look at all of the bills, but on the bills that we're interested in, we will put through an amendment. And I'll give you an example. One of the first bills that got introduced was around the safe workplace, and I put through an amendment that the bill should be made available in languages for multicultural communities, because we are, one of the most multicultural countries in the world, and Fowler is the most multicultural electorate in the country, and that to ensure that the government also do an outreach in multicultural communities to promote this Safe Workplace Act. Surprisingly, the government supported the amendments, and so did the opposition, which I was told doesn't occur regularly. So that is something that has happened, which can give hope, but we need to do more of that. We need to make sure that the government takes on board suggestions and amendments from the independents, because I believe that the independents make some real genuine contribution to shaping the policies that will impact the lives of every single Australian in the country.
Yeah. So if a 16-year-old came up to you in Western Sydney and said, I care about my community, but I hate politics, what would be your response?
I would say, don't hate politics, because politics is actually part of our daily lives. Yeah. Everything we do involves politics, from your transport travelling here, from buying your equipment. There's tax there's government policies that makes it either cheaper or more expensive or accessible. So it's very important to understand how much politics is part of our daily life. But what I do encourage people, and I have a lot of young staff here who are working part-time but studying, is that to get an understanding of how it works, of understanding how we can play a role in shaping policies, and how we can make an impact in the community through the engagement work that we do, so that we can actually educate our community about what's available, how to access some of those services and resources, and also to fight for resources. Because, for instance, with the Western Sydney Airport being built here, the government has failed to really build a ground transport that would connect Western Sydney people to the Western Sydney Airport. So they're building an airport, and there's nothing that connects us here. So all of those things need young people to be aware of. And so I try to, through my work, and I've also got the Fowler Youth Advisory Committee, whereby I bring young people in my community to be involved, so that they have a taste of what it means to have a say in our political system. So hopefully that way they don't get discouraged from engaging with politicians, and that politician Canberra is not something that is an alien to them, but it's actually something that they can make part of their daily, not daily life, but regularly in whatever they do. They know that they have to understand it, and they have to find a way to contribute to it.
So, Di, young people care about things like housing, climate, and mental health. What are you doing to make sure those issues are heard in Canberra?
Look, Jack, thanks for that. I think that obviously different areas, the issues are prioritised differently. For a lot of our young people here, they prioritise mental health, they prioritise job opportunities and housing. Interestingly, climate is there, but it's not on top of it. It's about them. For them, it's about how they can, in the future, access jobs. Growing up in a socially disadvantaged community, jobs, opportunities is harder to come by, or the network is much smaller than, say, if you were in Bradfield, in a more affluent area, and it's just that young people, they have a different network system, whereas out here the youth has a different network. And therefore access to opportunities is a bit more limited, and I'm trying to open it up for them. Through my Fowler Youth Advisory Committee last term, they brought up the issue of HECS, which is the high education debt, and as a result of that, I was able to push for the changes in the HECS debt, and that's why the government then, in their second budget, brought down the HECS indexation from 7.1% to 3.1%. That's a result of my students saying it's too much for us. We have to travel to university, and it's costing us a lot of money, and cost of living is such a big priority. So that they contributed. They tell me what's impacting them. Mental health, the same thing. It's about, a lot of people here don't talk about, and I'm sure young people in Bradfield probably don't talk about mental health. We do have our the mental health program. I forgot. I can't forget the name of it now. What is it called? But anyway, but they reach out about mental health. But because culture often is a stopping block for people out here, because they're too ashamed to talk about the fact that they've got mental health issues. So they don't want to talk about it openly, and so I'm trying to get young people to be more open, to share their experiences of their challenges, their struggles within families here, because obviously when you come here from a war-torn country or have trauma, your family's priorities is different to what you as a young person, you're trying to integrate, you're trying to be part of the wider youth community, but then you're being pulled back as well by your cultural expectations, religious expectations. So there are many challenges here in our community for young people, but what I try to do at the moment is, through my Fowler Youth Advisory Committee, is to ensure that our young people have equal opportunities for access, resources and services, access to outside of their higher education, access to pathways if they can't finish the HSC, if they can't go to university, at least pathways for them to continue their education, but also at the same time have a job that will give them dignity, right? So, so our challenges here are quite different for the young people.
So being an MP is a crazy role. It's a great job, but still crazy role. How stressful is it being an MP? What's something people wouldn't expect about the day-to-day job?
Look, I suppose when you become a member of parliament, you choose that pathway. I mean, I kind of got into it by accident, but what I love about my role is the fact that I'm able to, collect so many stories, because my previous life was a journalist. So I love gathering stories. So I love talking to people. I love getting their stories. And then in my role as a parliamentarian, I then am able to use those narratives in order to influence policy. So I take that a step further. So therefore, that's very rewarding for me. So I suppose the stressful part is the driving to Canberra part. It's a 3 hours drive there. And when you get to Canberra, I find sometimes at Canberra, as you mentioned earlier, people just scream at one another. I just don't think that's an effective an effective way to spend my time. I rather spend my time in my electorate, engaging with my community, gathering the information, and then working on policies that really would change lives. So that's the stressful part, traveling to Canberra and watching how much time people spend in arguing with one another, and which I find it not very useful. But the majority of the work I do as a parliamentarian is very rewarding, because I get to touch lives, I get to see people, I get to hear people's stories. And in an electorate like Fowler, I mean, this weekend I went to a chariots festival, the Festival of the Chariots, which is the Indian Fijian diaspora celebration of the Hare Krishna event. And then following that, it was yesterday, then I went to a Chaldean St. Thomas, the Apostle Feast Day with the Chaldean community. And then I think on the Saturday night, I couldn't go to that event, but there was a Laotian 50th anniversary of the Laotian Australian community settlement here in Australia. So our community is rich of cultures, and that's what I love about the role.
Yeah. So Di, as a member for Fowler, how do you balance national issues like cost of living and local issues in your electorate?
Look, I think being a federal MP, one of the challenging things that we do is to balance, prioritise our community needs versus national and international issues. And I remember when I got elected, Cathy McGowan, who was an independent member for Indy, came to see me and said to me, she goes, "You must always remember, when you walk into this house, you're a representative of your community. You need to prioritise their needs first and foremost." And so for me, their needs over the last term has been cost of living, especially energy increase in the electricity prices, as well as affordable housing, as well as the cost of living. So I have been fighting on those issues and have been calling the government on all of those issues in the last term. Of course, we have challenging international issues as well. But where I stand with international issues is that, how does it impact my community where it's multi-faith, multicultural? How to make sure that we still live in harmony and that we celebrate the diversity that we have here, rather than bringing international tensions into a community like ours. So I always stand for peace, and as somebody who escaped war-torn Vietnam, I always will stand for peace. Of course, I know that Australia has to defend itself for any future aggression. We need to plan for that. And how do we defend Australia? Sometimes I think, Australia has this girth by sea as part of our songs, our national anthem, and we are girthed by sea. And I think that being girthed by sea is also a means of defence and protection, but we need to do more to encourage young people to go into the defence force, to play a role in defending Australia. But for me, local issues matter most. The most important thing. Small business is very important for me, because we have a huge small business community here. There are migrants and refugees who that's their livelihood. So I'll fight for them, and I'll make sure that we are heard about how to ensure that, that they can maintain, that can raise a family, and that their business is running, because that's their livelihood at the end of the day. So it's always challenging. It's a fine line, but I know that at the end of the day, I need to prioritize my community's needs first above, anything else.
Yeah, amazing. So, Western Sydney often feels quite left behind. What's one thing that the media or government often get wrong about your area?
You're right there, Jack, about Western Sydney and Southwest, because we're in Southwest Sydney, are often gets left behind and forgotten. And I think what they are getting wrong is that it's because predominantly we are low social economic, we're non-English speaking, we're migrants or refugees, so therefore they think that this community will take second best. So they'll do whatever, they'll dump lots of refugees here, and they don't provide us with the infrastructure, they don't provide us with regular trains for people to travel, they don't provide more buses. So I think government, both state and federal, often think that our community here, our people will not speak up because, people think that, they're lucky to be here, so they're now working hard, so that's all right, let's ignore them, let's not do it much at all, and they won't say anything. That could have been correct, say, in 20 years ago, but I think the younger generation, these children of the migrants and the refugees, have been educated here, and hopefully with my role as an advocate for our community, who are constantly out there in the media, who constantly speak up, will show that to the young people here in the community that we actually do have a voice. And I think hopefully we are slowly being heard.
So if a 15-year-old from Fowler wanted to run as a PM in 2050, what would you say to them?
Well, that'd be awesome. I think it'd be great to, I do have a young person here who said that when she was young, she wants to be the PM. She wants to be the Prime Minister of Australia. And I said, that's fantastic. I've never had somebody in my community who have come up to say that to me. So I think that if somebody said that to me, a young person in my community, I definitely will encourage them. And in this case, I would definitely try to support Kimberly in her aspiration.
A big thank you to Dai Lee for taking the time to sit down and have a really thoughtful, open conversation. It's a bit of a trek to get out there, but honestly so worth it. Such an insightful chat, and definitely one of my favourite interviews so far. This one's actually the longest I've recorded, and it's also my first with an independent, which is really exciting. There's plenty more on the way, so stick around. Lots of big conversations coming soon. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening to Your First Vote with me, Jack Okill. If you enjoyed today's episode, check out more wherever you get your podcasts. My socials are on the screen. Stay informed, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one.